Kapilji, can I switch over to you for a moment for you to get the process underway? You sent me a wonderful amount of information about your observations about the historical aspects of our relationship with other communities in this country, spanning, I think you were going back to almost 30 years of observations. So I think you have an incredible perspective to set all of this in context. So over to you.
Certainly, but probably more than 30 years. We've actually had in this country many challenges as immigrants coming to the nation, challenges of actually fitting in, of integrating, of actually trying to find our place in society. And when the early exodus actually took place, that's obviously from East Africa, the Kenyan one, followed by the Ugandan one. We saw the good and the bad side of British society at that time. The bad side was that we certainly had, in those days, quite a strong presence of the National Front, the far-right groups and so on. But at the same time, we also saw some brilliant, beautiful hosting by so many cities and towns throughout the UK that actually welcomed our people with open arms. You'll actually see videos of complete villages coming out and saying to East African Asians, don't worry, we'll do our best to look after you. So there's always the good, and there's always sometimes the bad as well. We've got to take that with a pinch of salt. Now, in the early days, we faced most of the challenges from the far right. So let's say in quotes, the enemy was fairly clear, and British society knew exactly where that was coming from. And we took that on and we progressed. We not defeated them, but we succeeded despite the challenges that were coming through to us. And we saw in the 70s, 80s, and 90s a slightly different variation. So, for example, there was a discussion about what's actually happening in the Northwest, the Northeast, and so on. Well, I actually grew up in the Northwest, and I can say to you that when Navratri and Diwali used to take place, and we used to actually have the Ras Garba sessions and so on, there were certain communities who either were not keen on what we were doing, or they wanted to infiltrate and take part. And from what I could gather, and I was a young lad at that time, from what I could gather, it was in order to pursue Hindu girls. And obviously, us Hindu boys were in a position where we acted as a barrier. So those challenges were there as well. And we have seen that on and off on a cycle for most of the time that we've actually been here. But more recently, one of the things that I've noticed is that there appears to be what I call an Islamist element, which is different. It's quite extreme. It's very severe. It's one that seems to be localized, so it's the local community. But the ideology appears to come from overseas. It's been imported. These notions from very extremists from across the world have been accepted by our citizens in this country. You know, when I say our, I mean all our citizens. That includes the whole complete Muslim community as well. And within that, it appears that some have actually gone very extreme, and that little group there can actually cause many difficulties. And at the same time, we actually see import, as I call it, of many refugees with many challenges. They come from both nations. They come from an ideology which varies from one sect to another, one nation to another. And this mix, or as we Hindus would call this khichdi, has come together with competing groups trying to outdo each other. And it seems that in the old days, though it's not gone away, the target has always been the Jewish community. That focus, I fear, has actually changed, and it's now become the Hindu community. Why would they actually consider challenging the Hindu community? Because we're in a space where we are well integrated. We are performing way beyond um, our expectations and everyone else's expectations. We are net contributors to this nation. Our community, I think the last data statistics that I saw, only 359 Hindus are in jail out of a population of 1.5 million. Now, that's the lowest proportion of any ethnicity or any faith group. In fact, it is so low that the official statistics classify it as 0%. So we got such great things to celebrate, and we do celebrate and we take part. And then we realize that there are still some extremists out there who actually wish to harm us. And what we saw in Leicester, let's be very clear, when it comes to cricket or football, the rivalries go on, not just in this country, throughout the world. Sometimes they get out of hand, but then they come back and it carries on. That's been the case. So this has got nothing to do with cricket. This is actually to do with an extremist element that actually took over and said, we actually want to make a point. And they did make a point. And their toolkit was attack, make sure that on social media, you actually have the engine of this toolkit that goes into operation to actually lie about the events. This is complete and utter lies which they were actually propagating. And their main purpose was to create anarchy. They actually wanted to put fear into a population, a subpopulation called the Hindu population, and to make sure that we were subjugated, as historically many have tried to actually do that to us. And at that time, it is only right and proper that sometimes a community comes out and says, you know, this is not right. This is not British. This is not the way we do this. The streets of Great Britain belong to all of us. You cannot section off one particular part and say, this is ours, and how dare Hindus actually walk through this, or how dare Hindus actually do a protest march. We can all do that. We've seen protests up and down the country. Extinction Rebellion do protests, day in and day out. Mm-hmm. The unions do this day in, day out. So why can't the Hindus do that to actually express their displeasure of what might be happening in society? So they took that and started attacking Hindus. And then they actually have friends in media. The BBC basically took the fake narrative, as did The Guardian, that took up the fake narrative. And there were some journalists within this, and I shan't name them, but I think everyone who wants to find out can actually find these names online very, very quickly. Some journalists who actually had a motive to actually be anti-Hindu, and they propagated the lies. So you have social media and the engine of social media being used to actually promote lies, fake news, and to spread hatred. And I think this is the element that is so, so dangerous. When you spread hatred and you incite violence, we cannot accept that. Not in UK, not on our streets. It doesn't matter who you are. As far as the British people are concerned, no, we are not going to accept that. And we saw the BBC literally this week roll back and say, sorry, we made an error. We actually said things and we published things, and we actually had a narrative which was based on total lies. The Guardian, in fact, had to come back and change their narrative because they realized that they were so far off the truth that they were looking silly. Not just silly, they were looking like the bigots that they are. And I call them bigots. Here it is live on your stream. I challenge the Guardian right now in front of this global audience, and I challenge the Guardian and to the BBC, if you dare have the capacity and the integrity and the honesty to actually tell the truth, I am ready, willing, and able to take that mantle on, and I will come live on your shows and prove to you how wrong you are. Do you have that integrity and honesty? They will not. They will run away. The Guardian always runs away. So there's a lot more we can pack in, but generally speaking, the media was not hijacked Okay, the media took an active part. Some in the media took an active part in this anarchy, and they did so willingly, knowingly, and willfully to actually damage the Hindu community. It's almost as if they were the mouthpiece of the Islamists. That is a danger.
Please remember to subscribe to us and switch on the notifications for this channel. For our other social media links, more content, and to support our work, please visit citti.net. Dhanyavad. Namaskar.